Alright, let's now explore form tags. So basically, the form tag is simply used to create an HTML form for user input. The input tags you see here on screen look all the same. The only difference is the value of the attribute type. What is the attribute type? The type attribute simply specifies the type of input element to display. When talking about a form on a web page, input elements could refer to text, checkbox, buttons, and so on. Okay, so if we use the text input, it means we require text type data from the user. Like we're literally asking the user for text data. We're telling the user, please give us some text input. The radio tag input is used to select one option. So the HTML radio button is used to define the small circles you see here, which are highlighted when selected. In this example, we use the radio functionality to allow the user to select a gender, like male or female. The checkbox input tag defines a checkbox. The checkbox is shown as a square box that is ticked or checked when activated, like you might see in an official government paper form. Then we have the submit input tag, which is used to define a submit button and submit all form values to a form handler. So as you can see, the procedure for creating a form is relatively easy. We just have to use some form tags, label tags, and input tags. As you can see in this picture, we first use a form tag, then inside it we add a label tag, then we add an input tag. The label is just a text that tells the user what information we need from him. Then the input tag is used to specify the type of input that will be taken from the user. So as you can see in this example, we have label and input for first name, then again label and input for last name. Additionally, as you can see, I have written a BR tag at the end of every line. It simply means that we want to go to the next line at the location of the break tag. As we explained earlier, if you need to break any line from anywhere, you'll simply need to use the BR tag there. Okay, so that was it for the text fields. Next, we need to add a submit button. You can do this by using an input tag with the attribute type equal to submit. This input with a type equal to submit will help us submit the form. To help you understand better, let's go over the attributes one by one. Okay, so first we have type. Here we are specifying the type of the input, which is text. ID is given to attach a link once we start using CSS. Do not worry about it for now. Name is used to identify the input. In other words, the name attribute specifies a name for an HTML element. It has no specific function in HTML. Next, we have the value of this field. We use the random first name and last name here as default values in the form, but they don't really matter. When users visit our website, they can modify the values to their own first name and last name. Alright, let's now go to VS Code and see how all of this works. So first of all, I'll create a form tag. You can see that there is an action attribute, but don't worry about it, we'll explain it later. Now, let me create a label tag and name it first name. Then I use a break tag in order to move to the next line. Okay, so now I use an input type equal to text because I want the user to input some data in the form of text. The name and value attributes are not necessary. I will simply put the value attribute here. I'll give it a value equal to username. I then add a break tag. In the next line, I do the same for last name. Now, when you specify the type of the input, you can simply click on Ctrl plus spacebar to get suggestions. Since what I need here is in text form, I will use the same input as for the first name. Then for the value, I fill up my cell with the value last name. Okay, I can now save the file. Then I copy the file path. I then go to my browser and paste the URL. And here you go. We have the form that we expected. As you can see here, it's possible to edit and write whatever you want. It's just that the default values are username and last name because that's what we specified in the code. But yeah, of course, I mean, you can change those values to whatever values you want. Okay, so if you refresh your website, you'll see that the values go back to the default ones. Now, let me go back to VS Code and insert one more input in the code. I will simply add the submit button as an input. I go back to my browser and here you go, we have our submit button. The form is submitted when the user clicks on submit. Now bear in mind that in a fully functioning web page, the form will take input from the user and post that data in the back-end applications like PHP. So the back-end application will process the data that's given by the user. Right now, I don't have any back-end coding to process the data. But if you ever study back-end development, you'll better understand how all of this works. Okay, for now, our entire focus is just on the front end, and in this course we are focusing on HTML for now, which is a cornerstone technology used by most websites to create visually engaging web pages. So it's all about front end for now. In the previous lecture, we saw how input tags are used. Let's now dig deeper into the topic. So when it comes to input tags, they can either be used in form tags or without form tags. All the inputs that you see here are very useful and play a significant role. The submit and button inputs have the same functionality. The color input helps us choose a color. We'll talk about them one by one in detail. So let's now go to VS Code and see how all of this works. Okay, now I'll try all these inputs that we talked about one by one. First, I need to add a label tag. The label tag is simply used to help the user understand what's the purpose of the input, like what's required from him. Okay, so I'll put username here and then I use a break tag. In the next line, I'll use input tag text type, a value equal to name, and then a break tag. I'll then simply copy paste what I just did and cut unnecessary things. Okay, so I put the password here. I save the file and check the result in the browser. So as you can see, I can enter a username and a password in this form. Now I'll paste the same tags again for the next input. I want an email type input here. Then I add another input. It's going to be a submit type input. I save the file and check out the result in my browser. And here we go. We have our form as expected. Now, I don't really know if you noticed or not, there is a little problem. I haven't used the form tag at the beginning. That's why when I click on submit, nothing really happens. Alright, so let me fix this now by copying the content and putting it inside the form tags. And as you can see now, when I click on submit, we can clearly see that the form is submitted. Alright, let's move on. Now, we'll use the label tag to add gender because we want information regarding it. I'll write a radio input type, name as gender and ID as male. Unfortunately, the user can only select one option, so I'll have to save and copy paste the lines of code for male. And then I do the same thing for female. The tags will be the same, or just using the word female instead of male. And now I save it and check the result in my browser. Oh, it looks like I made a mistake, so let me fix this. Problem solved. Now I'll copy paste these tags again in order to create a section about hobbies. So I'll just edit the name, type, and value. Okay, I will create a football, hockey sections for the hobbies and some other hobbies. You can see that I can select all the hobbies or just one hobby or none of them. So the user has the option to select whatever hobbies they like. The difference between the radio type and the checkbox type is that the radio is used for one choice, whereas the checkbox is used for multiple choices. Okay, Let me add a field for the date of birth. I'll use those inputs through which we can add the date of birth. First, I'll use the break tag here and then a label tag in the next line to write date of birth. Now, I'll use an input tag with a type attribute equal to date. Next, I do the same for date and time, and I save the file by pressing Ctrl S. Then I go to my browser and see the result. And here you can see the date of birth option in the browser. I can enter my date of birth in this field. Then if I add a break tag in my code, the date and time field will go to the next line. Whenever you forget the input type, simply press Ctrl plus space bar. VS Code will give you some suggestions to choose from. Okay, now you can pick a date and time here. Next, if you want to add a time input, this is how you do it. I'll create a new input tag here with a type equal to time. Then you can follow the same process for a color field. It's exactly the same process. Now, we'll create a field for the user so that they can send us their CV. I add a break tag first, then a label that tells the user what this field is for. In this case, it's for them to send us their CV. Now, since I want to receive their CV, then I'll choose a file type for the input tag, and here you go. We can see the result. The user can easily click on choose file and upload their CV. I can select the file I want from this option, then I submit it. Next, we'll see an input in which we require the user's phone number. Let me put a break tag here, then a label to make it clear what we're asking for. And in this case, we'll be asking for the phone number of the user. Okay, then I create an input tag that will be used to input the number. This option only supports numbers, not alphabets. And here you go. The user can put their phone number in a very convenient manner. Next, I'll use a new label to write telephone. Then a new input will be used to write the telephone input type. And you can see the results. The only difference is that this option supports alphabets as well. Next, let me use a new label and create a search field. Then I create a new input with a type attribute equal to search. And as you can see, the user can easily search for their file in this field. Next, I'll create a new label and write select week in it. It means you're giving the user a time interval in weeks. I'll copy these 3 lines again and use a new label input. It's gonna be a reset. And as you can see, if I want to reset the form while filling it out, I just can click on this reset button and everything will be reset. Okay, one last thing before we conclude this lecture. I can also create an input for a URL. Let me add the relevant lines of code here with a type equal to URL. I save the file and here you go. You can see the result. I can paste any URL I want in this cell. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the input tag. I really hope that the input tag is now super clear to you. And now on to the next lecture. In previous lectures, we saw how attributes are used. Let's now dig deeper into the topic and try to understand the role of attributes better. Okay, so we saw different attributes in previous lectures, like the value attribute. We can use restriction attributes in our form, which include read only, size, and disabled. Read only. Here you can see that I used the read only attribute, which specifies that the user can only read the given content and is unable to make any changes. Disabled, here you can see a screenshot in which a disabled attribute has been used. It basically specifies that the data is disabled. Users can read the text but cannot add any type of data. The data will be unusable and unclickable. Size, this input is used to give width to the data. There is a default width that's displayed, but in the case where you need to change it, then the size attribute is used. Let's see how all of this works in VS Code. So here I am in VS Code. You can see that I have used some attributes. Let's see the output in our browser. You can clearly see that we have 3 fields. One for the username, one for the password, and one for the email. Now, I'll edit the code using the attributes we saw previously. The first one will be read only. The second one will be used with the size attribute. And the third will be disabled. So in the first input, I've written read only, and I've changed the value to username. In the second input, I've written the specific size, let's say 30. And in the third option, I've used the disabled attributes. And as you can see from the results, the first is readable and the second cell size has been increased. You can increase it in the code to 50, and we see the output in the browser. And regarding the last field, which is about the email, we can clearly see that it's disabled. So the user can't do anything with the email field because it's disabled. Alright, and now on to the next lecture. In this lecture, we'll be introducing some new attributes like min, max, multiple, and placeholder. Min and max, these attributes are used to specify that the user cannot exceed the maximum limit and that they cannot go below the minimum value. Multiple, it's used with the input type file, and it means that the user can attach more than one file. Placeholder, this is a short hint that's displayed before the user enters a value, so it's just to help the user understand better what his input is gonna look like. So the placeholder helps the user in understanding how the input should look like. In this example, we can clearly see that the placeholder input tells us that you can enter numbers. It also tells us about the pattern that those numbers should follow. The user will see that he can add 3 digits from 0 to 9, followed by a dash, then 2 digits, followed by a dash again, then 3 digits. The user must follow this pattern, otherwise their input will not work. Alright, let's now go to VS Code and see how all of this works. You can see here that I have value equal to username. Let me remove this and use a placeholder in the input instead. So I'll write placeholder equal to username, and here you go. We can see the result. Let me now remove the read only attribute, and here you go. You can see that now it's possible to change the value inside the field username. The next thing we're gonna see are the min and max attributes. I have entered the minimum length as 5 and the maximum as 10. Let's now see the output. Let's now see the output. And here you go. As you can see, if I enter 4 characters, I get a notification warning me that the text should be at least 5 characters. Because that's what we specified in the code. We said that the minimum length is 5. Next, let me add an age label with a max length of 2. So I enter 4 digits here. But when I click on submit, it doesn't work because we exceeded the maximum value. Let me change the min to 20 and the max to 100. This will allow the user to put any age number between 20 and 100, and here you can see the output. It's pretty clear that any number less than 20 or greater than 100 would not work. So when I try to submit the form, it won't be submitted, simply because the age should be between 20 and 100. That's what we specified in the code. Okay, let's now discuss the pattern. I'll use this number as size and as a placeholder. Then I add a pattern here. So I write the pattern, brackets and digits from this to that. Let's say it is like 5 digits from 2 to 6, 3 digits from 0 to 9, and then similarly 4 digits from 0 to 8. I can also add a placeholder here Let's try to fill out the form. And as you can see, if I don't strictly follow the specified pattern in the code, the form will ask me to match the requested format. So I need to be strict with that and follow it exactly like it is required from me as a user. I just need to follow the instructions. Okay. Now, if I follow all the requirements of this form, it will be submitted successfully. Let me do this. Okay, so once everything is filled out correctly, meaning that the form is filled out according to requirements, I won't have any problems anymore. The form will be successfully submitted. Okay, so we saw many interesting input attributes before. Let's now talk about the required attribute. This attribute restricts the user and doesn't allow him to submit the form without filling it. Let's see how we can use this required attribute in VS Code. So as you can see, I have created 3 labels here: username, password, email. This is how my form looks like. In this case, I can submit my form without writing anything because there is no requirement. Now, if I go back to VS Code and add the required attribute, like if I add the required attribute, this is what we will get. So here I'm leaving the email field blank. If I don't try the email, which is a required field, I cannot submit my form. Let me fill out this field and submit my form. And here you go. Alright folks, so this is how we use all these input tags and attributes together. Let's move on.